The balloons danced against the clear blue sky, a kaleidoscope of colors celebrating the accomplishments of Westbrook University's graduating class. McKenna Thorne stood among her peers, the black graduation gown billowing gently around her slender frame as the warm June breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass and new beginnings. Her fingers trembled slightly as they gripped the leather-bound diploma, the culmination of 4 years of relentless studying, sleepless nights hunched over, textbooks and the weight of expectations she had carried since childhood. The golden tassel of her cap swayed before her eyes, a hypnotic pendulum marking the passage from student to adult. She should have felt triumphant, liberated, ready to conquer the world with her hard-earned business degree. Instead, a knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach, growing heavier with each passing moment as her eyes scanned the crowd, searching for the familiar faces of her family. There they were, standing near the back of the gathering. Her father, Broderick Thorne, tall and imposing in his tailored charcoal suit, his salt-and-pepper hair perfectly styled despite the humidity. Her mother, Vivian, elegant in a powder-blue dress that matched her calculating eyes, her honey-blonde hair swept into an immaculate updo that not even the breeze dared to disturb, and beside them, her younger sister, Callista, radiant in a floral sundress that accentuated her perfect figure, her glossy chestnut curls cascading over her shoulders. The perfect family portrait, save for the conspicuous absence of pride as they gazed at McKenna. No, their expressions held something else, something that made McKenna's heart sink, even as the university president announced the official conclusion of the ceremony, and the air erupted with cheers and the tossing of caps. Clutching her diploma to her chest like a shield, McKenna navigated through the sea of jubilant graduates and beaming families. Everywhere around, her proud parents embraced their children, tears of joy streaming down their faces, cameras flashing to immortalize the moment. "We're so proud of you. You did it. The world is yours now." The declarations of love and pride echoed in McKenna's ears, making the silence that awaited her at her destination all the more deafening. She plastered a smile on her face, one she had perfected over years of family gatherings and holiday portraits, bright enough to convince strangers, hollow enough to remind herself of the truth that lay beneath the surface. "Congratulations, McKenna," her father said as she approached, his voice as crisp and cool as a freshly pressed banknote. There was no embrace, no tears of pride, just a firm handshake, as if they were concluding a business transaction rather than celebrating a milestone. "You look flushed. You should have worn your hair up like your mother suggested. The photographers will be here soon for the family pictures." "Hi, Daddy," McKenna replied, fighting to keep the tremor from her voice. At 22, she still found herself reverting to the diminutive, still seeking the approval that remained perpetually out of reach. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure if you'd make it, with the Tokyo merger and all." "Your father rearranged several important meetings to be here," her mother interjected, her tone suggesting that McKenna should be grateful for this sacrifice. Vivian's kiss landed somewhere near McKenna's cheek, leaving a ghost of expensive perfume but no warmth. The ceremony was dreadfully long. I don't understand why they can't streamline these events. "Kenzie!" Callista's voice cut through the tension, a musical sound that always managed to capture attention. At 19, Callista was everything McKenna was not: confident, effortlessly beautiful, and most importantly, the undisputed favorite child. She embraced her older sister briefly, her smile dazzling. "Can you believe you're finally done?" "Was telling Darius that you'd probably start sending out resumes tonight, knowing you." Darius Harewood, Callista's boyfriend of 6 months, stood slightly apart from the family, his attention divided between his phone and Callista's every movement. With his chiseled jawline and family connections to the Harewood shipping empire, he was precisely the type of potential son-in-law that the Thornes approved of. He offered McKenna a distracted nod, clearly impatient to move on to the celebratory lunch that would undoubtedly focus more on Callista's recent modeling contract than McKenna's summa cum laude achievement. "Actually, I've already secured a position with Lowell and Associates," McKenna said, unable to keep a hint of pride from her voice. They were impressed with my senior thesis on sustainable business practices, and they've offered me an entry-level position in their environmental compliance department. It's a small firm, but they're doing important work, and I'll be able to make a real difference. Lowell and Associates. Her father's frown deepened the lines around his mouth. I've never heard of them. What happened to the internship at Kingsley Corporation that I arranged for you? That was meant to transition into a full-time position. McKenna's momentary confidence wilted under her father's disapproving gaze. I decided to explore other options. Kingsley's practices didn't align with my values, especially after their recent environmental violations in the Pacific Northwest. You thought, Broderick echoed, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet that McKenna recognized all too well. That's precisely the problem, McKenna. You're always thinking about these idealistic fantasies instead of practical realities. Kingsley Corporation is a Fortune 500 company with global reach and influence. This Lowell outfit will be a dead end for your career before it even begins. Now, Vivian interjected, her smile tight as she glanced around to ensure no one was witnessing this family discord on what should be a picture-perfect day. We can discuss career choices later. This is a day for celebration, isn't it? We have reservations at Elysium at 1 o'clock, and you know how impossible it is to get a table there without planning weeks in advance. Yes, and we have presents for the graduate, Callista added, seemingly oblivious to the tension or perhaps deliberately trying to diffuse it. Mine is the one in the silver paper. With the big bow. I picked it out myself, Kenzie. You're going to love it. Presents. The word should have kindled excitement, but in the Thorne family, gifts were rarely given without strings attached. They were bargaining chips, tools for manipulation, physical manifestations of approval or disapproval. McKenna remembered her 16th birthday, when Callista had received a brand new convertible, despite it being McKenna's celebration. Because Callista needs reliable transportation to her modeling auditions, their father had explained, while McKenna had been given a practical watch to help her learn the value of time management. The family made their way through the campus, past the ancient oak trees and manicured lawns where McKenna had spent countless hours studying, and occasionally allowing herself to dream of a future where she wasn't constantly measuring herself against her sister's shadow. Callista chatted animatedly about her upcoming photo shoot for a luxury skincare brand, while Darius offered occasional comments about the pretentiousness of the university architecture, despite never having attended college himself. McKenna walked slightly behind them, the diploma case growing heavier in her hands with each step, a tangible reminder of her achievements that somehow still felt hollow in the face of her family's indifference. Elysium was exactly the type of restaurant the Thornes favored, exclusive, overpriced, and dripping with an atmosphere of privilege. The maitre d' recognized Broderick immediately, ushering the family to a prime table overlooking the restaurant's famous water gardens. Crystal glasses caught the light, transforming it into miniature rainbows across the pristine white tablecloth. McKenna sat stiffly, acutely aware that her simple pearl earrings, a gift from her grandmother before she passed, paled in comparison to the diamond studs adorning her mother's and sister's ears. A bottle of the Chateau Margaux 1995. Broderick instructed the sommelier without consulting the wine list. We're celebrating my daughter's graduation today. For a fleeting moment, McKenna felt a surge of warmth. Perhaps in this refined setting, surrounded by the trappings of the success her father valued so highly, he might finally express genuine pride in her accomplishments. Perhaps the carefully selected wine was an acknowledgement that she, too, was worthy of the Thorne legacy. Callista has been accepted to study abroad in Paris this fall, her father continued, raising his glass once the wine had been poured. A tremendous opportunity for her to expand her modeling portfolio while experiencing European culture, to Callista's bright future, and of course, to McKenna's graduation. And just like that, the moment shattered. McKenna raised her glass mechanically, taking a small sip of the exquisite wine that suddenly tasted like ashes on her tongue. Of course, even in a toast ostensibly for her achievement, Callista's latest opportunity took precedence. It had always been this way. For as long as McKenna could remember, Callista's ballet recitals scheduled on the same nights as McKenna's debate competitions, forcing their parents to choose. They always chose Callista. Callista's minor accomplishments celebrated with lavish parties, while McKenna's academic honors warranted only a perfunctory acknowledgement. "Paris?" McKenna managed to ask, setting her glass down carefully to hide the trembling of her fingers. "That's wonderful, Callie. I didn't know you were applying to study abroad programs." "It's not exactly a study program," Vivian clarified, her voice brimming with maternal pride that McKenna had rarely heard directed at herself. "It's an exclusive cultural immersion experience. Callista will be staying at the Harewood family's apartment in the 16th arrondissement, taking private French lessons and working with some of the top photographers in the fashion industry. Darius's father arranged it all, and we've decided to make it a grand European tour," Broderick added, signaling for the waiter to refill his glass. "Paris, Rome, Barcelona, Vienna, and London. 3 months of exposure to the finest art, culture, and connections that Europe has to offer. It's an investment in Callista's future that will pay dividends for years to come." McKenna's throat constricted as the implications became clear. While she had been working multiple campus jobs to supplement her living expenses, applying for scholarships and grants to minimize her student debt, and focusing on building a resume that would make her marketable in a competitive job market, her parents had been planning an extravagant European tour for her younger sister, a sister who had barely completed her freshman year of college with passing grades. "That sounds incredible," she said, the words scraping against her dry throat. "You'll have to send lots of pictures." "Better than pictures," Callista beamed, exchanging a knowing look with their parents. "You'll get to see all the photos in person when we have our exhibition at the Thornhill Gallery in the fall. Daddy's arranged for me to work with Leonidas Vasiliev, you know, the famous portrait photographer. We're going to create a series called American Ingenue in Europe. It's going to be transformative for my portfolio, the Thornhill Gallery. Another reminder of the family's wealth and influence, a private gallery her father had purchased 3 years ago, ostensibly as an investment, but primarily as a showcase for Callista's burgeoning modeling career. McKenna couldn't recall a single instance when her academic papers or business proposals had received a fraction of the attention or resources that were routinely lavished on Callista's pursuits. The waiter arrived with the first course, a delicate arrangement of seared scallops and microgreens that McKenna could barely taste as the conversation continued to revolve around Callista's European adventure. The details washed over her: private guided tours of the Louvre, exclusive shopping excursions on the Champs-Élysées, yacht parties along the Mediterranean coast, a private suite at the Vienna Opera House for a performance of La Traviata. Each new revelation was another needle pricking McKenna's heart, deflating any sense of accomplishment she had managed to preserve through the graduation ceremony. "And now," Vivienne announced as the dessert plates were cleared away, "it's time for gifts. Callista, would you like to go first?" Callista bounced excitedly in her seat, pushing a meticulously wrapped silver package across the table. "I hope you like it, Kenzie. I picked it out myself." McKenna carefully unwrapped the gift, revealing a sleek leather portfolio embossed with her initials in silver. It was undeniably beautiful, crafted from supple Italian leather in a rich cognac shade that McKenna had always favored. For a moment, she felt a genuine rush of pleasure. Her sister had remembered her preference for warm earth tones over the cool blues and silvers that the rest of the family preferred. "Open it," Callista urged, practically bouncing with excitement. Inside, McKenna found a collection of business card templates, each bearing her name and the Thornhill Foundation logo. "I had them designed specially," Callista explained. "This way, when you start working for Daddy's foundation after you get tired of your little environmental job, you'll have professional cards ready to go." The designer said the minimalist aesthetic is very on trend for corporate identities this year. The thoughtfulness McKenna had momentarily perceived evaporated. Of course, it wasn't a gift celebrating her achievement or supporting her chosen career path. It was a not-so-subtle reminder of her family's expectation that she would eventually abandon her principles and take her rightful place in the family business. "Thank you, Callie," she said quietly, closing the portfolio and placing it carefully beside her water glass. "It's very elegant." "Our gift next," Vivian declared, sliding a slim envelope across the table. Unlike Callista's elaborately wrapped present, this was simply a cream-colored envelope with McKenna's name written in her mother's precise calligraphy. With a growing sense of dread, McKenna opened the envelope. Inside was a glossy brochure for the European tour Callista had been describing, complete with photos of luxury, hotels and exclusive destinations. Clipped to the brochure was a handwritten note in her father's bold strokes. "To celebrate your graduation and Callista's acceptance into the European program, we are pleased to present Callista with this all-expenses-paid cultural tour. We're confident this experience will shape her future success in meaningful ways." Confusion washed over McKenna. Was this some kind of mistake? The note explicitly stated that the gift, McKenna's graduation gift, was being given to Callista. She looked up, meeting her father's impassive gaze across the table. "I don't understand," she said, struggling to keep her voice steady. "This is for Callista?" "The European tour is for Callista, yes," Broderick confirmed, his tone suggesting that this should have been obvious. "It's an investment in her developing career, but your graduation gift is in there as well." McKenna looked back at the envelope, noticing for the first time a small gift card that had been partially hidden behind the brochure. She pulled it out, staring in disbelief at the $10 gift card for a coffee shop chain. "We know how you like to spend hours working in coffee shops," her mother explained, as if this justified the stark disparity between the gifts. "This way you can enjoy a few of those fancy lattes you're always drinking while you settle into your new job." The world seemed to tilt beneath McKenna as the reality of the situation crystallized with painful clarity. After 4 years of maintaining a perfect GPA, working part-time jobs to minimize her financial dependence, and securing a position with a respected firm based solely on her own merit, her graduation gift was a $10 coffee gift card. Meanwhile, her sister, who had yet to demonstrate any substantial commitment to her education or career beyond enjoying the privileges her appearance and their family name afforded her, was being rewarded with a 3-month luxury tour of Europe worth tens of thousands of dollars. Have you ever felt completely invisible in your own family? Like no matter what you achieve, someone else's minor accomplishments always shine brighter. McKenna's story might feel painfully familiar to many of us who have lived in the shadow of a sibling, parent, or friend who seems to effortlessly capture all the attention and rewards. If you've ever felt this crushing weight of unfair comparison, type "I understand McKenna's pain" in the comments below. Your words might help someone else feel less alone in their struggle for recognition. The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Around them, the restaurant continued its elegant symphony of clinking glasses and murmured conversations, oblivious to the devastation occurring at the Thorne family table. Darius checked his watch impatiently, clearly bored by the family drama unfolding before him. Callista glanced between her sister and their parents, a flicker of discomfort crossing her perfect features before she defaulted to her usual self-absorption. "Isn't it time for the exhibition preview?" she asked, turning to their father. "You said the gallery curator wanted us there by 3 to discuss the placement of the new collection." "Yes, we should be going," Broderick agreed, signaling for the check. He turned to McKenna, his expression betraying no awareness of the emotional devastation he had just inflicted. "Will you be joining us at the gallery, or do you have other plans for the afternoon?" Other plans, as if she had anticipated this humiliation and scheduled an escape. As if she had known that her graduation day, supposedly her day of triumph, would once again be overshadowed by Callista's latest opportunity. McKenna stared at the gift card in her hand, the glossy surface reflecting the overhead lights in a mocking sparkle. "Actually," she said, surprised by the steadiness of her voice as she placed the gift card on the table and rose from her seat, "I do have somewhere else to be. Thank you for lunch." Without waiting for a response, she gathered her diploma and her sister's leather portfolio, leaving the gift card behind like the insulting token it was. She walked out of the restaurant with her spine straight and her head high, maintaining the dignity that her family had failed to afford her. It was only when she reached the privacy of her car, a 10-year-old sedan she had purchased with her own savings, in contrast to Callista's luxury convertible, that the tears finally came, hot and relentless, blurring her vision as she gripped the steering wheel. For 22 years she had tried to earn her parents' love and approval. For 22 years she had watched as that love and approval were lavished on her younger sister, while she received only criticism and indifference. The $10 gift card wasn't just a thoughtless present, it was a message, clear as day. You will never be enough. No matter what you achieve, no matter how hard you work, you will always be worth less in our eyes. As the tears subsided, leaving McKenna hollow and exhausted, a strange calm settled over her. Perhaps it was the finality of the insult, the unmistakable clarity of where she stood in her family's hierarchy of affection. Or perhaps it was the realization that she no longer needed to chase the approval that had been withheld for so long. For the first time, she allowed herself to acknowledge the truth she had been running from. Her family's love was conditional, and she would never be able to meet those conditions without sacrificing the person she wanted to be. With trembling fingers, she started her car and pulled away from the restaurant, away from the family that had never truly seen her. Her apartment awaited, a modest studio she had decorated with second-hand furniture and cherished books, a space that was wholly hers. Tomorrow, she would begin her job at Lowell & Associates. Tomorrow, she would start building a life defined by her own values rather than her family's expectations. But today, as the distance between her and the restaurant grew, McKenna made a silent promise to herself. She would never again measure her worth by the yardstick of people who refused to recognize it. The road ahead was uncertain, lined with both challenges and possibilities, but for the first time, she would navigate it on her own terms, not as Callista Thorne's overlooked sister, but as McKenna Thorne, summa cum laude graduate and architect of her own destiny. The weeks following graduation unfolded in a blur of new routines and cautious independence for McKenna. Her modest apartment became a sanctuary, the first space truly her own, without the looming shadow of family expectations. The morning sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains she'd found at a vintage shop, casting golden patterns across the worn hardwood floors as she prepared for another day at Lowell & Associates. 3 weeks into her new position, and already she felt more valued there than she ever had in her family home. The environmental consulting firm occupied the 3rd floor of a converted textile factory in the city's revitalized warehouse district. Unlike the sterile glass and chrome of her father's corporate headquarters, Lowell & Associates embraced the building's industrial past. Exposed brick walls, massive windows, and original timber beams created an atmosphere of authentic character rather than manufactured prestige. McKenna's small workspace featured a reclaimed wood desk positioned near a window overlooking a community garden, where volunteers tended rows of vegetables destined for local food banks. "Morning, Thorne," called Zachariah Lowell as McKenna settled at her desk, coffee in hand. The firm's founder and principal consultant was a tall, rangy man in his 50s with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and an encyclopedic knowledge of environmental regulations. Unlike Broderick Thorne, who demanded formality and deference from everyone, including his own daughters, Zach insisted on a first-name basis with all 15 employees, regardless of their position. "Got that draft analysis on the River Point project? The client's coming in at 11. "Just finishing the appendices," McKenna replied, powering up her computer. "I'll have it on your desk by 9:30. "Excellent." Zach paused, studying her with keen blue eyes that missed nothing. "You're doing solid work, you know. That section on groundwater remediation alternatives, sharp. Analysis. Creative thinking, exactly what we need around here." The simple praise sent a warm flush through McKenna's chest. 3 weeks, and she'd received more professional recognition than in years of striving for her father's approval. "Thank you. I've been reading some interesting case studies from the Scandinavian approaches. Tell me about them over lunch, Zach suggested. Bring your research. The whole team's going to Nora's Deli today. We're celebrating Prisha's 4-year anniversary. With the firm. This was another difference that still startled McKenna, the genuine camaraderie among her colleagues. At Thornhill Enterprises, employment anniversaries passed unmarked unless you were in the executive suite. Here, every milestone merited recognition, from work anniversaries to personal achievements. Last week, they'd all taken an extended lunch to attend Ethan's daughter's elementary school play. As promised, McKenna delivered the completed Riverpoint analysis before heading to her small conference room meeting with 2 junior environmental scientists. The morning progressed with a familiar rhythm that was already becoming comfortingly routine, consulting calls, research, collaborative problem-solving with colleagues who valued her input, despite her recent graduate status. By lunchtime, she had almost forgotten the perpetual knot of anxiety that had been her constant companion throughout her academic career. The team lunch at Nora's Deli was boisterous, with Prisha Mehta, the firm's senior hydrologist, blushing as her colleagues presented her with a custom-framed satellite image of the watershed she'd helped restore through a 4-year remediation project. McKenna found herself seated between Zach and Valencia Ochoa, the firm's no-nonsense office manager, who kept the place running with terrifying efficiency and an inexhaustible supply of homemade churros. "So, McKenna," Valencia said, passing her a plate of the cinnamon-dusted treats, "Zach tells me you turned down an offer from Kingsley Corporation to join our little operation. Brave move. They've got those fancy downtown offices with the rooftop garden and the espresso bar in the lobby." McKenna hesitated, unsure how much of her family background to reveal. "Their environmental compliance record didn't align with my values," she said finally, selecting the simplest truth. "Values over corner offices," Zach nodded approvingly. "That's why you'll fit right in here. Speaking of which, how's the apartment hunting going? Find anything yet?" The question caught McKenna off guard. "Apartment hunting? Didn't you mention your current place is just a short-term lease? Something about looking for something more permanent now that you've settled on a job?" Zach frowned slightly. "Or am I mixing you up with Ethan's sister?" "Oh no, I'm staying put for now," McKenna said quickly. The truth was more complicated. Her studio apartment was all she could afford while aggressively paying down her student loans, a financial burden her parents had refused to help with after she declined the position at Kingsley. "It's small, but it works for me." Valencia's shrewd gaze suggested she caught the evasion, but she merely shrugged. "Small spaces are underrated. Less to clean, less to heat, less to worry about. My first apartment after divorcing Xavier was basically a closet with a hot plate, but it was mine, you know? Sometimes having your own space, however tiny, is worth more than all the square footage in the world when it comes with strings attached." The conversation moved on to Prisha's plans for the approaching weekend, but Valencia's words lingered in McKenna's mind. Her own space, however tiny, without strings attached. Wasn't that exactly what she'd been seeking since childhood? A place where her worth wasn't constantly measured against her sisters, where her choices weren't undermined by parental disapproval. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, a text from Callista, the first contact from any family member since the disastrous graduation lunch 3 weeks earlier. "OMG, Kenzie! Just landed in Paris. The Harewoods apartment is amazing, overlooking the Seine with a view of the Eiffel Tower. Sending pics. Miss you tons." A second later, her phone chimed with incoming photos. Callista posing on an elegant balcony, the Eiffel Tower visible in the background. Callista in what appeared to be a luxurious apartment with herringbone floors and crystal chandeliers. Callista and Darius toasting with champagne flutes as the Paris sunset painted the sky behind them. Each image was a carefully composed testament to privilege and indulgence, the European adventure that represented everything their parents valued: beauty, status, connections, and the cultivation of appearances. "Everything okay?" Valencia asked, noticing McKenna's expression as she stared at her phone. "Fine," McKenna said, tucking the device away without responding to her sister's message. Just some family stuff. Ah, family, Valencia nodded knowingly. The people who know exactly which buttons to push because they installed them in the first place. The rest of the workday passed in productive focus, but Callista's photos lingered in McKenna's mind like a splinter beneath the skin. Irritating, impossible to ignore completely. By the time she returned to her apartment that evening, the contrast between her sister's gilded European adventure and her own modest circumstances felt painfully stark. Her studio apartment, which had seemed like a cherished haven that morning, now appeared shabby and inadequate in comparison to the Parisian luxury Callista was enjoying. The stack of bills on her small dining table didn't help. Student loan payments, utilities, groceries, car insurance. She'd declined her father's offers to pay for college, determined to make her own way without the strings that inevitably came attached to his financial support. Now, faced with the reality of entry-level salary versus substantial loan repayments, she sometimes questioned that principled stance. A knock at her door interrupted her gloomy financial calculations. Surprised, she rarely received visitors, having left most of her college friendships to wither as she focused on academics. McKenna peered through the peephole to find Valencia Ochoa standing in the hallway, holding a covered dish. "I hope I'm not intruding," Valencia said when McKenna opened the door. "I remembered you. Mentioned living in this building when you first started, and I was dropping off some papers for my nephew in apartment 3C. Thought I'd bring you some of my mother's chicken enchiladas. They freeze well if you don't want them tonight." "That's incredibly thoughtful," McKenna said, genuinely touched by the unexpected kindness. "Please come in. It's not much, but—" "It's charming," Valencia declared, stepping into the apartment and glancing around with approval. "Those curtains are fantastic. Where did you find them?" "A little vintage shop on Maple Street," McKenna replied, suddenly seeing her space through Valencia's appreciative eyes rather than comparing it to Callista's Parisian palace. The owner said they came from an old theater that was being renovated. "Perfect touch," Valencia nodded, placing the dish on the counter that separated the kitchenette from the main living area. "I like a home with stories, much more interesting than those sterile model home setups." That looked like no one actually lives there. As McKenna found plates and utensils, Valencia wandered to the small bookshelf that held McKenna's prized collection of environmental texts, business ethics volumes, and the dog-eared novels that had been her escape throughout childhood. "Impressive library for someone just starting out," she commented. "Most new graduates I know are more interested in building their shoe collection than their bookshelf." "Books were always my refuge," McKenna admitted, setting the table. "Especially during family vacations when everyone else was interested in shopping or lounging by the pool. I'd find a quiet corner with a good book and disappear for hours." "Ah, The Invisible Daughter," Valencia said with surprising insight. "I recognize the type. My sister was the family star too, beautiful, charming, the center of attention. I was the sturdy, reliable one who got good grades and kept to myself. Took me years to realize that being overlooked had given me space to develop strengths my sister never had the chance to cultivate." McKenna paused, fork halfway to her mouth. "What kind of strengths?" "Independence, resilience, the ability to solve problems without running to someone else for help. Self-knowledge." Valencia counted them off on her fingers. "When you're not the golden child, you learn to stand on your own 2 feet pretty damn quick. Turns out that's a valuable skill in the real world, where no one's going to hand you opportunities just because you have a pretty smile." The enchiladas were delicious, rich with complex spices and tender chicken, but it was Valencia's conversation that truly nourished McKenna that evening. Without prying, the older woman shared her own journey from overlooked middle child to successful professional, offering a perspective McKenna had never considered, that being forced to make her own way might actually be an advantage rather than a punishment. "Don't get me wrong," Valencia said as they finished the meal. "It still stings sometimes when I see my parents fawning over my sister's kids while barely remembering my son's birthday. Family patterns are hard to break, but I learned to build my own support system, my chosen family of friends who see and value the real me. That's worth more than inherited approval." After Valencia left, McKenna found herself standing at her window, gazing out at the city lights with new eyes. For years, she'd seen her family's conditional love as a personal failing. If only she were more like Callista, more beautiful, more charming, more willing to follow the prescribed path, perhaps then she would be worthy of the same adoration. But what if the problem wasn't her at all? What if the Thorne family's value system itself was fundamentally flawed? Her phone chimed again, another text from Callista, this one a video of her strolling down the Champs-Élysées, shopping bags from luxury boutiques swinging from her arms as she blew kisses. At the camera, "Daddy says the sky's the limit, living my best life, wish you were here." For the first time, McKenna didn't feel the customary stab of envy at her sister's good fortune. Instead, she felt something closer to pity. Had Callista ever experienced the satisfaction of earning something entirely through her own merit? Did she know the quiet pride of solving a complex problem without assistance, or the deep contentment of creating a space that reflected her true self rather than others' expectations? McKenna's phone rang, her mother's ringtone, a sound she hadn't heard since graduation day. For a moment she considered letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity won out. "Hello, Mother." "McKenna, darling." Vivian's voice held the brittle cheer she reserved for public appearances. "I'm just calling to check on you. We haven't heard from you since your graduation lunch. Your father and I were beginning to worry." The concern rang hollow, given the 3-week silence. From both parents. "I've been busy settling into my new job," McKenna replied, keeping her tone neutral. "How are you and Dad?" "Oh, we're just fine. Your father's Tokyo merger is proceeding splendidly. We're flying to Paris next week to meet Callista and Darius. The Harewoods have arranged a private showing at Galerie Lafayette after hours. Isn't that lovely? And Callista's first photo shoot with Leonidas Vasiliev is scheduled for the following day." "That sounds wonderful," McKenna said. Automatically the practiced response of a lifetime. "I'm sure Callista is thrilled. She's absolutely flourishing. You know how she thrives on new experiences." A pause, then, "We thought perhaps you might want to join us, just for a long weekend. Your father could arrange for the corporate jet to bring you over. It would be nice to have the whole family together." The offer caught McKenna completely off guard. After the $10 gift card debacle, after years of being an afterthought in family plans, they were suddenly inviting her to Paris. That's unexpected. "Well, your sister specifically asked for you to come. She says it isn't the same without her big sister to share it with." Another pause. "And the Harewoods will be there with their son Harrison. You remember Harrison? He's completed his MBA at Wharton and is taking over the family's European operations. Such a promising young man. I mentioned you'd be starting at that little environmental firm, and he expressed interest in meeting you. And there it was, the real motivation behind the sudden invitation, not genuine desire for her company, but a matchmaking opportunity with a family their father likely hoped to form business alliances with. McKenna was being summoned not as a daughter, but as a potential business asset, a pawn in her father's corporate chess game. A month ago, McKenna would have accepted the invitation, desperate for any sign that her family wanted her presence. She would have taken vacation days from her brand new job, spent money she couldn't spare on appropriate attire for meeting the Harewoods, and subjected herself to her mother's inevitable criticism of her appearance, her career choices, her failure to be more like Callista. But tonight, standing in her modest apartment with the lingering warmth of Valencia's kindness and wisdom surrounding her, McKenna found the strength to choose differently. "I'm sorry, but I can't take time off so soon after starting my position," she said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "Please give Callista my love and tell her I look forward to hearing all about Paris when she returns." "McKenna," her mother's tone sharpened with disapproval, "this is a significant opportunity. Harrison Harewood is quite the catch, and your father thinks there could be synergies between Harewood Shipping and Thornhill Enterprises. Surely your little job can spare you for a weekend of networking." The dismissive reference to her little job, the position she had earned through her own merit at a firm doing work she believed in, crystallized something in McKenna's mind. My job is important to me, Mother. I'm building something here that matters. Please understand that I have to prioritize my professional commitments. I see. The chill in Vivienne's voice could have frozen the Seine. Well, if that's your choice. Your father will be disappointed, of course. He was hoping to introduce you to some important contacts. I'm sorry to disappoint him, McKenna said, and realized with a start that she actually wasn't sorry at all. Give everyone my best. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. She ended the call before her mother could respond, then turned off her phone entirely, unwilling to deal with the barrage of manipulative texts that would likely follow. For the first time in her life, she had declined a family summons without offering elaborate justifications or apologies. The simple act of prioritizing her own needs felt simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. The summer months passed in a productive rhythm as McKenna immersed herself in her work at Lowell & Associates. July brought long days filled with site assessments, client presentations, and growing responsibilities as Zach increasingly trusted her judgment on complex remediation proposals. By August, she had been assigned as lead analyst on the River Point redevelopment, a former industrial site being transformed into affordable housing with green space, exactly the kind of project that aligned with her personal and professional values. Her phone continued to chime with messages from Paris, then Rome, then Barcelona, as Callista's European tour progressed in a whirlwind of luxury hotels, exclusive events, and photo shoots with famous photographers. Each message arrived like a digital postcard from a parallel universe, one where money flowed without limit and doors opened effortlessly before the Thorne family name. McKenna had developed a new ritual for these messages. She would look at them once, acknowledge the pang of complicated emotions they evoked, then set her phone aside and focus on building her own life, brick by modest brick. Earth to McKenna. Prisha's voice broke through her concentration one Wednesday afternoon in mid-August. The team's heading to Watershed Brewing to celebrate the River Point contract. You coming? McKenna glanced up from her computer, where she'd been fine-tuning projections for groundwater remediation timelines. We got it. Official confirmation. Signed, sealed, and delivered about 20 minutes ago. Prisha grinned, her dark eyes sparkling with triumph. 3-year contract, full implementation of your tiered approach. Zach's practically floating. Pride swelled in McKenna's chest. The River Point proposal had been her first major project as lead analyst, and she'd spent countless hours developing an innovative approach that balanced ecological restoration with budget constraints. That's incredible news. Even better, Prisha continued, perching on the edge of McKenna's desk. The City Council was so impressed with your presentation that they're considering adopting similar requirements for all future brownfield redevelopments. You might have just changed the standard for urban renewal projects citywide. The implications of this success washed over McKenna. At Kingsley Corporation, she would have been months into a soul-crushing internship, implementing environmental compliance measures designed to meet minimum legal requirements while maximizing corporate profits. Instead, she had helped create a model that prioritized true sustainability and community benefit, work with purpose and integrity, exactly what she had always dreamed of doing. The celebration at Watershed Brewing embodied the collaborative spirit that had come to feel like home to McKenna. The small team claimed a long table on the brewery's patio, where Edison bulbs, strung overhead, cast a warm glow as twilight deepened. Zach ordered pitchers of the brewery's award-winning ale for the table, making sure there were non-alcoholic options for those who preferred them. There were no assigned seats, no hierarchy. Senior partners mingled with junior staff, sharing stories and laughter with equal ease. To the River Point team, Zach toasted, raising his glass, and especially to McKenna, whose fresh perspective and tenacity made this win possible. The city planning director specifically mentioned your presentation as the deciding factor. Warmth that had nothing to do with the summer evening or the craft beer flooded through McKenna as her colleagues raised their glasses in her direction. This was recognition based purely on merit. No family connections, no leveraging of the Thorne name, just the quality of her work and the strength of her ideas. "I'm just grateful for the opportunity," she said, uncomfortable but pleased with the attention. Everyone on the team contributed to making this happen. "True," Valencia agreed from across the table, "but it was your innovative approach that sealed the deal. Take the win, McKenna. You've earned it." As the evening progressed, McKenna found herself in conversation with Ethan Chen, the firm's GIS specialist, who was describing his daughter's latest science fair project. "She's determined to prove that her classroom plant grows faster when she talks to it," he explained, showing photos of a smiling, 8-year-old girl carefully measuring a leafy green plant. "We've got charts and graphs all over our refrigerator tracking daily growth rates." "That's adorable," McKenna smiled, feeling a pang as she realized her own parents had never shown such enthusiasm for her childhood science experiments. "She's got the scientific method down perfectly." "Yeah, she's something else," Ethan said with unabashed paternal pride. "Hey, the firm's annual family picnic is next Saturday at Riverside Park. You should come. Amelia would love to tell you all about her plant communication theories, and Valencia always makes her legendary paella." "Oh, I'm not family," McKenna began. "Work family counts," Zach interrupted, overhearing as he returned from the bar with a fresh round. "The picnic's for everyone who's part of Lowell and Associates, plus their loved ones, significant others, kids, parents, friends, whoever you want to bring. It's a chance for us all to connect outside the office." "I'll think about it," McKenna promised, though she wasn't sure who she would bring. Her closest college friends had scattered across the country after graduation, and she'd been too focused on work to build a social circle in the city. When McKenna returned to her apartment that night, she found another message waiting. Not from Callista this time, but from her father. A rare occurrence that immediately sent a familiar tension spiraling through her shoulders. "McKenna, your mother informs me that Callista has been trying to reach you regarding the exhibition opening at Thornhill Gallery next month. The Harewood family will be attending, and your absence would be noted. Call my assistant to arrange your travel. Thornhill Enterprises has an important announcement planned for that evening. No congratulations on the Riverpoint contract, no acknowledgement of her professional achievements. Just a summons delivered with the expectation of compliance, as if the weeks of independence had never happened. As if she remained the dutiful daughter whose time and priorities could be commandeered at will." McKenna set her phone down without replying, moving instead to her tiny balcony, where she had nurtured a collection of native plant species in mismatched pots, black-eyed Susans, purple coneflowers, and prairie grasses that attracted bees and butterflies to her small urban oasis. As she watered each plant carefully, she reflected on the evening she had just experienced, the genuine celebration of her work, the warm inclusion in the work family Zach had described, the pride of achievement based solely on her own merit. The contrast with her biological family could not have been starker. There she had always been measured against Callista and found wanting. Here she was valued for exactly who she was and what she contributed. There her worth was determined by her willingness to conform to family expectations. Here her independent thinking was her greatest asset. Her phone chimed again, Callista this time, a video message showing her posing against a Barcelona sunset, flawless in a designer dress. "Kenzie, you have to come to the gallery opening. Daddy's making some huge announcement, and Darius's brother Harrison keeps asking about you. Please say you'll be there. It won't be the same without you." The message ended with Callista blowing a kiss at the camera, her perfectly manicured hand sparkling with what appeared to be a new diamond bracelet. For a moment, McKenna felt the familiar pull, the ingrained need to please, to seek approval, to hope that this time might be different. Perhaps the announcement involved her somehow. Perhaps her father had finally recognized her value, her capabilities. Perhaps. She caught herself mid-thought, recognizing the dangerous pattern. How many times had she constructed elaborate fantasies of finally earning her parents' approval, only to face the same disappointment? How many times had she compromised her own needs and values in pursuit of recognition that never came? The Thornhill Gallery opening would be like every other family event. Callista would be showcased and celebrated, McKenna would be critiqued and marginalized, and any brief interaction with her father would revolve around his disappointment in her career choices. The important announcement would almost certainly be related to Callista's modeling career or another expansion of Thornhill Enterprises that had nothing to do with McKenna. As for Harrison Harewood, McKenna had met him briefly at a family function years ago, a privileged, entitled young man who had viewed her with the same dismissive condescension her father's business associates typically reserved for women they considered decorative rather than substantive. The thought of being paraded before him as a potential match made her skin crawl. With sudden clarity, McKenna realized she had a choice to make, not just about the gallery opening, but about the fundamental direction of her life. She could continue to orbit her family's world, perpetually seeking approval she would never receive, or she could fully commit to the new path she had begun to forge, surrounded by people who valued her authentic self. The decision, when viewed in this light, was surprisingly simple. Turning back to her phone, she composed a brief, polite message to her sister. "I'm sorry, Callie, but I won't be able to attend the gallery opening. I have prior commitments here. I hope it's a wonderful event, and I look forward to hearing all about it afterward. Love you." To her father, her response was similarly direct. "Thank you for the invitation, but I'm unable to attend the gallery opening due to professional obligations. Please give everyone my best wishes for a successful event." After sending both messages, McKenna turned off her phone notifications and returned to her balcony garden, feeling lighter than she had in years. The choice to prioritize her own life, the one she was building with intention and purpose, over family obligations and expectations, felt revolutionary. For the first time, she was not just reacting to her family's demands, but actively choosing her own path. Have you ever had to choose between pleasing your family and following your own path? The decision McKenna made wasn't easy, but it was necessary for her growth. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the greatest freedom. If you've ever had to make a similar difficult decision for your own well-being, type "choosing myself" in the comments. Your story might give someone else the courage to make their own brave choice. September arrived with cooler breezes and subtle shifts in the quality of light, golden afternoons that hinted at autumn's approach. For McKenna, the month brought not only seasonal change, but a deepening sense of belonging at Lowell and Associates. The Riverpoint project was fully underway, with McKenna making weekly site visits to monitor the initial remediation phases. Each time she stood on the former industrial grounds, watching as contaminated soil was carefully removed and groundwater filtration systems installed according to her specifications, she felt a profound satisfaction that no luxury European tour could have provided. The firm's family picnic had proven to be another revelation. McKenna had attended with trepidation, uncertain of her place in this gathering of established social connections. She needn't have worried. Ethan's daughter Amelia had immediately adopted her as an honorary aunt, proudly showing off her science fair charts and soliciting McKenna's professional opinion on plant growth patterns. Valencia's extended family had welcomed her with the same warmth as their matriarch, insisting she try every dish on the potluck table and sending her home with enough leftovers to fill her small refrigerator. By sunset, as children chased fireflies across the park lawn and colleagues relaxed with cold beverages around picnic tables, McKenna had experienced a startling realization. This felt more like family than her actual family gatherings ever had. Now, as she reviewed soil test results in her office on a Wednesday afternoon, her computer chimed with an incoming email that made her stomach tighten. A message from her mother with the subject line, "Gallery opening. Final details." McKenna hesitated before opening it, reminding herself of the boundary she had established. She had declined the invitation clearly and directly. Her presence at the Thornhill Gallery was not required for its success. She had legitimate professional obligations that took precedence over family appearances. The email, when she finally clicked it open, was predictably guilt-inducing. "McKenna, your father and I are extremely disappointed by your continued refusal to attend this important family event. The Thornhill Gallery opening is not merely a social gathering, it represents a significant milestone for your sister's career and an essential networking opportunity for Thornhill Enterprises. Your absence will be noted by several key business associates who have specifically asked about meeting both Thorn daughters. Callista is devastated that you won't be there to support her on this momentous occasion. After all she has done to include you in her European adventures through her messages and calls, your lack of reciprocal support is deeply hurtful to her. Family should come first, McKenna. Your professional obligations at that small firm could surely be rearranged for a single evening of family unity. In case you reconsider, I've attached the event details. The Harewood family's private jet will be bringing several guests from the West Coast. I've taken the liberty of asking them to reserve a seat for you, should you come to your senses about your priorities. Mother attached to the email was a digital invitation featuring a striking black and white portrait of Callista, photographed by the famous Leonidas Vassiliev during their time in Paris. Callista's perfect features were captured in dramatic lighting, her expression a practiced blend of vulnerability and hauteur that had become her modeling signature. American Ingenue, the European collection, proclaimed the invitation in elegant script, followed by details about the exclusive opening night celebration. A few months ago, this message would have sent McKenna spiraling into guilt and self-doubt. She would have questioned her decision, wondering if she was being selfish or unreasonable in prioritizing her work over family obligations. She might have even called her boss to request time off, booked a last-minute flight, and spent money she couldn't spare on an appropriate outfit for the gallery opening, all to stand in Callista's shadow once again, receiving her parents' veiled criticisms and pointed comparisons. Today, however, she felt only a calm certainty as she closed the email without replying. Her mother's manipulative tactics were so transparent now, the appeal to family loyalty without any recognition of reciprocity, the dismissal of McKenna's career as insignificant, the implication that Callista's inclusion of McKenna through digital boasting constituted some form of sisterly sacrifice that required compensation. Most telling was the complete absence of any genuine interest in McKenna's life or accomplishments. No questions about her work, her well-being, or her reasons for establishing this boundary. She was composing a response in her mind, polite but firm, reiterating her unavailability without defensiveness or justification, when Zach appeared in her doorway, his expression unusually serious. "Got a minute, McKenna? Something's come up with the River Point project." Concern immediately displaced thoughts of family drama. "What's wrong? Did the contamination levels come back higher than expected?" "Not exactly." Zach gestured for her to follow him to the conference room, where she was surprised to find several colleagues already gathered, including Prisha and Valencia. "We've received some interesting correspondence regarding River Point." On the conference table lay printouts of what appeared to be emails and legal documents. As McKenna scanned them, her blood ran cold. The letterhead was unmistakable. Thornhill Enterprises, her father's company. Thornhill Enterprises has made an unsolicited offer to purchase the River Point property. "From the city," Zach explained, his tone carefully neutral. "They're proposing to scrap the affordable housing plan in favor of a luxury commercial development, high-end retail, exclusive condominiums, a private members club, the works. They're offering the city 3 times the appraised value." McKenna felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath her. "But the remediation contract is already signed. The affordable housing plan has been approved by the Planning Commission. Contracts can be broken for the right price," Prisha said grimly, "and city planning approvals can be revised with sufficient political pressure. Thornhill's proposal includes substantial contributions to the mayor's pet infrastructure projects." The deliberate avoidance of your father wasn't lost on McKenna. Her colleagues were trying to be sensitive to her family connection while discussing what amounted to a corporate attack on their project. The careful consideration they showed even in this moment of crisis contrasted sharply with her family's persistent disregard for her feelings. "There's more," Valencia added, sliding another document across the table. They've specifically referenced our remediation plan in their proposal, not by name, but the approach is identical to your innovative phased treatment strategy. They're proposing to implement the exact same ecological restoration techniques, just as a green veneer for their luxury development. McKenna stared at the document, her mind racing. The timing couldn't be coincidental. The sudden interest in a property that had been available for years, the specific reference to remediation approaches she had developed, the aggressive attempt to derail a project she had publicly championed. This wasn't just business, it was personal. Her father was deliberately sabotaging her work. "Do they know?" she asked quietly. "Does Thornhill Enterprises know that Lowell and Associates has the remediation contract?" The uncomfortable glances exchanged by her colleagues confirmed what she already suspected. "Your name appears on the Public Planning Commission documents as the lead environmental analyst," Zach confirmed, "and our firm is listed as the contracted remediation consultant." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Her refusal to attend the gallery opening to play her assigned role in the Thorne family performance had triggered this response. It wasn't enough for her father to express disappointment or anger directly. Instead, he had deployed the full weight of Thornhill Enterprises to undermine the project that represented her first significant professional achievement. "What can we do?" McKenna asked, forcing her voice to remain steady despite the turbulent emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "That's what we need to figure out," Zach replied. "The City Council will vote on Thornhill's offer next week. We've been invited to present our case for continuing with the original plan at the public hearing. The affordable housing advocates are mobilizing community support, but Thornhill has deep pockets and significant influence with several council members." "We fight back," Valencia said firmly. "We demonstrate the community benefits of the original plan. We highlight the environmental advantages. We rally public opinion. And we pray that at least some of the council members value community needs over campaign contributions." The meeting continued with strategic planning, dividing responsibilities, identifying potential allies, preparing presentations for the public hearing. Throughout, McKenna's colleagues treated her with the same respect and inclusion they always had, never once suggesting that her family connection to Thornhill created divided loyalties or compromised her commitment to their cause. When the meeting concluded, Zach asked McKenna to stay behind. She braced herself for the conversation she had been dreading, questions about her relationship with Broderick Thorne, concerns about potential conflicts of interest, perhaps even doubt about her role in the River Point defense. Instead, Zach surprised her. "I want you to lead our presentation at the council hearing," he said, studying her reaction carefully. "You developed the remediation strategy. You built relationships with the community stakeholders. You understand the environmental and social benefits better than anyone. You're the right person for this, McKenna." Stunned, McKenna struggled to find words. "But, given the circumstances, my family connection to Thornhill—" "Do you have any divided loyalties here?" Zach asked directly. "Any doubts about which side of this fight you want to be on?" "None whatsoever," McKenna answered without hesitation. "I believe in our project, in what it will mean for the community and the environment. I'm committed to seeing it through." "Then your family name is irrelevant," Zach said simply. "I hired you because of your intelligence, your values, and your dedication to sustainable development. Nothing that's happened today changes that. If anything, I'm more convinced than ever that you belong at Lowell and Associates." The validation nearly broke McKenna's composure. All her life she had been defined primarily by her relationship to the Thorne family, valued or devalued based on how well she represented the family interests and image. Now, faced with a direct conflict between her family's business interests and her own professional values, her chosen mentor had reaffirmed his faith in her integrity without question. That evening, McKenna sat on her small balcony, watching the sunset paint the urban skyline in shades of amber and gold. Her phone lay on the table beside her, silent since she had turned off notifications from her family members earlier that day. The peace of this simple ritual, unwinding with a cup of tea amid her thriving container garden, stood in stark contrast to the emotional turmoil. Beneath the surface, her father's calculated attack on the Riverpoint project revealed the true nature of his regard for her. It wasn't just indifference or disappointment, it was a fundamental refusal to recognize her autonomy, her right to choose a path different from the one he had prescribed. In his worldview, her professional accomplishments were insignificant enough to be casually destroyed as punishment for her failure to comply with family expectations. The realization should have devastated her. Instead, it brought a strange clarity, as if a long-blurred photograph had suddenly come into sharp focus. For years, she had blamed herself for her parents' conditional love, believing that if she could only be more like Callista, more beautiful, more compliant, more willing to reflect their values back to them, she would finally earn the approval she craved. Now she understood that the flaw lay not in her, but in their distorted value system. The Thornhill Gallery opening was scheduled for the same evening as the City Council hearing on the Riverpoint project. The timing could hardly have been more symbolic, a direct choice between her family's world of privilege and appearances versus her chosen path of purpose and integrity. There was no middle ground, no possibility of compromise. As darkness settled over the city, McKenna reached for her phone, composing a final message to her parents. "I've learned about Thornhill Enterprises' bid for the Riverpoint property. I will be speaking at the City Council hearing in support of the original Affordable Housing and Environmental Remediation Plan. I hope you can respect that I'm following my own values and convictions, even when they differ from yours. I wish Callista all the best for the gallery opening." She sent the message without expecting a response, then turned to her laptop to continue preparing her presentation for the council hearing. Whatever happened with the Riverpoint project, whatever her father's next move might be, McKenna had finally found the courage to stand firmly in her own truth, not as Callista Thorne's overlooked sister or Broderick Thorne's disappointing daughter, but as McKenna Thorne, environmental analyst and advocate, a woman of principle charting her own course through the world. The path ahead would not be easy. Her father's resources vastly outmatched those of Lowell and Associates, and his influence extended into circles of power that could determine the fate of the Riverpoint project. But for the first time in her life, McKenna felt fully aligned with her own values, supported by colleagues who respected her for exactly who she was. Win or lose, she would face this challenge on her own terms, without compromising the integrity that had become her greatest strength. Has someone ever tried to control you by undermining your achievements or dreams? Have you faced the difficult choice between family expectations and your own authentic path? McKenna's story reminds us that sometimes standing in our truth means facing powerful opposition, even from those who should support us most. If this resonates with your experience, comment "Standing Firm" below. Your courage might inspire someone else facing a similar crossroads. The City Council chambers buzzed with tension as McKenna adjusted her notes at the podium. The ornate room with its polished wood panels and high ceilings seemed designed to intimidate ordinary citizens, an architectural reminder of the power dynamics at play. Every seat in the public gallery was filled, with affordable housing advocates wearing bright green Save Riverpoint buttons clustered on one side, while suits from Thornhill Enterprises occupied the other, their expressions coolly confident. McKenna had arrived early to prepare, Valencia and Zach flanking her like protective sentinels. The rest of the Lowell team sat in the front row, each wearing their firm's distinctive blue lapel pins featuring a stylized river. Delta, a silent show of solidarity that steadied McKenna's nerves. In the hours before the hearing, her phone had remained tellingly silent. No messages from her parents, no last-minute pleas from Callista. Their silence spoke volumes about where their priorities truly lay. The council recognizes McKenna Thorne, representing Lowell and Associates, to speak regarding the Riverpoint development proposal, announced Councilwoman Rivera, the proceedings chair. "You have 10 minutes, Ms. Thorne." Taking a deep breath, McKenna met the councilwoman's gaze directly. "Thank you, Councilwoman Rivera and members of the City Council. I appear before you today not just as an environmental analyst for Lowell and Associates, but as a resident of this city, who believes in responsible development that serves our entire community, not just those who can afford luxury accommodations. From the corner of her eye, McKenna could see the Thornhill representatives shifting uncomfortably at her direct approach. Among them sat Hollister Remington, her father's chief legal counsel, a man who had frequently joined their family for holiday dinners, who had once helped her with a school project on corporate law. Now he regarded her with the cold assessment of an opponent, all personal history apparently forgotten, in service of Thornhill Enterprises' objectives. The River Point property has been vacant for 15 years, its soil and groundwater contaminated by decades of industrial use, McKenna continued, her voice growing stronger. Previous developers deemed the remediation cost too high relative to potential returns, leaving this prime riverfront location as a toxic eyesore. The affordable housing initiative currently underway represents a breakthrough, a partnership between public investment and innovative environmental approaches that makes remediation economically viable while addressing our city's critical housing shortage. She clicked to display the first slide of her presentation, before and after visualizations of the River Point property, contrasting the current chain-link fenced wasteland with renderings of the planned green space and modest residential buildings designed to blend with the historic neighborhood. Our remediation plan, which has already begun implementation, employs a phased bioremediation approach that reduces costs by 40% compared to traditional methods while achieving superior environmental outcomes. This innovation is what makes affordable housing financially feasible on this site. The alternative luxury development being proposed by Thornhill Enterprises would use the same remediation techniques pioneered by our firm, but would replace critically needed housing with high-end retail and exclusive condominiums, starting at price points beyond the reach of 85% of our city's residents. For the next 8 minutes, McKenna presented a compelling case built on data, community impact assessments, and environmental projections. She highlighted the extensive community input that had shaped the affordable housing plan, the job creation estimates for both construction and ongoing maintenance, and the projected reduction in homelessness if the 200 planned units were completed. Throughout, she maintained a tone of professional conviction, never once alluding to her personal connection to the competing proposal or allowing emotion to overshadow the substantive merits of her argument. In conclusion, she said as her allotted time neared its end, the choice before this council is not simply between two development proposals. It's a choice about what kind of city we want to build together, one that addresses our most pressing needs and heals environmental damage through innovation, or one that further concentrates wealth and opportunity among those who already have plenty of both. The affordable housing plan for River Point represents our best values as a community. I respectfully urge you to reaffirm your commitment to this vision. Thank you. As McKenna returned to her seat beside Zach, Valencia squeezed her hand briefly, a gesture of pride and support that meant more than any formal accolade. Now it was Thornhill's turn to present their counter-proposal. Hollister Remington approached the podium with the smooth confidence of a man accustomed to winning, his Italian leather shoes gleaming under the chamber lights. "Honorable council members," he began, his resonant voice carrying easily. Through the chamber, Thornhill Enterprises appreciates the idealistic vision presented by the previous speaker. However, we must deal in economic realities, not wishful thinking. Our proposal triples the tax base that would be generated by the affordable housing plan, creating sustainable revenue for city services for decades to come. Our development will create twice as many permanent jobs, attract tourism dollars, and significantly enhance the city's prestige as a destination for luxury, retail and living. As Remington continued detailing the financial incentives Thornhill was offering, contributions to infrastructure improvement, funding for a new wing at the Children's Hospital, establishment of a scholarship program for underprivileged youth, McKenna found herself wondering if these were genuinely new initiatives or simply repackaged versions of projects Thornhill had already planned, now strategically deployed to sweeten this deal. The hospital wing, she recalled, had been announced at a charity gala months ago. The scholarship program had been Callista's pet project since her own abbreviated college experience. When the presentations concluded, the council opened the floor for public comments. One by one, community members approached the microphone, housing advocates describing the desperate need for affordable units, environmental activists praising the innovative remediation approach, neighborhood representatives expressing their preference for residential over commercial development. Interspersed were business owners aligned with Thornhill, speaking of economic growth and prestige, their arguments polished, but their personal stakes in the outcome less evident. Throughout it all, McKenna felt a peculiar sense of calm. She had done everything possible to advocate for the project she believed in. Whatever the council decided, she had stood firmly for her values without compromising or apologizing. She had faced her father's corporate power as an equal, not a subordinate, a fundamental shift in the dynamic that had defined their relationship throughout her life. As the public comment period concluded and the council prepared to deliberate, McKenna's phone vibrated with an incoming call. Her father's direct line, a number that rarely appeared on her screen. After a moment's hesitation, she stepped into the hallway to answer. McKenna. Her father's voice was controlled, revealing nothing of his thoughts. That was quite a presentation. You watched the live stream, she asked, genuinely surprised that he would take time away from Callista's gallery opening to monitor the council hearing. I always monitor significant challenges to Thornhill interests, he replied, the implicit message clear. This was business, not personal concern. Your remediation approach is genuinely innovative. Hollister was impressed, though he'd never admit it publicly. Unsure how to respond to this unexpected acknowledgement, McKenna remained silent, waiting for whatever came next. I have a proposition for you, Broderick continued after a pause. Thornhill Enterprises needs someone with your environmental expertise and innovative thinking. I'm prepared to offer you a position heading our new Sustainable Development Division, with full authority to implement your remediation approach across all our properties. The compensation package would be substantial, significantly more than what Lowell can afford to pay you. The offer caught McKenna completely off guard. After weeks of silence following her refusal to attend the gallery opening, after the aggressive attempt to undermine her first major professional achievement, her father was suddenly offering her a high-level position within his corporate empire. Why? She asked, cutting through the corporate speak to the core question. Why now, after everything that's happened? Because you've proven your value, Broderick answered with characteristic directness. Your presentation today demonstrated capabilities I hadn't fully appreciated. Thornhill Enterprises can benefit from your expertise, and you can benefit from our resources and reach. It's good business, McKenna. Good business. Not reconciliation, not recognition of her as a daughter deserving of respect regardless of her career choices, but a transactional calculation of her potential utility to Thornhill Enterprises. The same cold assessment that had led him to dismiss her for years as she pursued goals that offered no obvious benefit to the family business. And the River Point project? She pressed. What happens to the affordable housing plan if I accept this position? We would incorporate elements of affordable housing into our development, her father offered, his tone suggesting this was a significant concession. Perhaps 15% of the residential units integrated with the luxury condominiums, a compromise that serves multiple interests. 15%. 30 units instead. Of 200, likely relegated to the least desirable locations within the development, a token gesture that would barely dent the city's housing crisis. And in exchange, she would abandon Lowell and Associates, the colleagues who had valued her from day one, the firm whose ethics aligned with her own. She would enter her father's world, where her worth would remain contingent on her utility, where her substantial compensation would come at the cost of her independence and integrity. I'm honored by the offer, McKenna said carefully, but I'm committed to Lowell and Associates and the original River Point vision. Thank you for recognizing my work, but I must decline. A weighted silence followed, broken finally by her father's measured response. "I see, that's disappointing, McKenna. The offer won't remain open indefinitely." "I understand," she replied, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "I should get back to the hearing. Goodbye, Father." As she ended the call and returned to the council chambers, McKenna realized something fundamental had shifted within her. Her father's offer and her refusal had severed the last tenuous thread of hope that she might someday earn his approval on her own terms. That chapter was closed now, allowing her to move forward without the constant backward glance, without measuring each achievement against an impossible standard. The council members were returning from their deliberation room as she slipped back into her seat beside Zach. "Everything okay?" he murmured, noting her expression. "Yes," she answered with complete honesty. "Everything is exactly as it should be." Councilwoman Rivera called the chamber to order, the murmuring crowd falling silent as she prepared to announce their decision. After careful consideration of both proposals, this council has voted 4-3 to proceed with the original affordable housing development and the remediation contract with Lowell and Associates. The chamber erupted, cheers from the affordable housing advocates, disappointed mutters from the Thornhill contingent. Zach grasped McKenna's hand, his face alight with triumph, while Valencia enveloped her in a quick, fierce hug. Around them, their colleagues exchanged high fives and congratulatory backslaps, their celebration genuine and unrestrained. The deciding factor, Councilwoman Rivera continued once the noise had subsided, was the compelling case made for the community benefits of the affordable housing plan combined with the innovative environmental approach already underway. This council believes the River Point property can become a model for sustainable, inclusive urban development that serves our entire community. As the formal proceedings concluded and the crowd began to disperse, Hollister Remington approached McKenna, his expression unreadable. "Your father sends his regards," he said, offering his hand. "He suggested I tell you that Thornhill Enterprises respects the council's decision and will not pursue further action regarding River Point." McKenna accepted the handshake, recognizing the message hidden within the formal courtesy. Her father was conceding this battle, allowing her this victory. Whether it was a business calculation or some grudging respect for her stand, she would likely never know. What mattered was that the project would proceed as planned, providing homes for families who desperately needed them while healing an environmental wound in the urban landscape. "Please give my father my regards as well," she replied, "and my best wishes for Callista's gallery opening." The Lowell team celebrated their victory that evening at Watershed Brewing, claiming the same long table on the patio where they had toasted the initial contract win. Pitchers of craft beer circulated alongside platters of food, the conversation flowing as easily as the drinks. No one mentioned McKenna's family connection to the opposing side. There was no awkwardness, no questioning of her loyalty, only genuine inclusion in the collective triumph. "A toast," Zach announced, raising his glass. "To the River Point team, who proved today that innovation and integrity can prevail against even the most powerful interests. And especially to McKenna Thorne, whose brilliant work and unwavering commitment made this victory possible." As her colleagues raised their glasses, McKenna felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer evening or the craft. Beer. This was belonging, not based on family name or conditional approval, but on shared values and mutual respect. These people had seen her at her best and believed in her capabilities without reservation. They had trusted her to represent their collective work, despite her family connections. They had created space for her to become her full self, without the constant pressure to conform to others' expectations. Later that night, as McKenna stood on her small balcony watching the city lights twinkle against the velvet darkness, her phone chimed with an incoming text, from Callista, not their parents. "Saw the council vote on social media. Congratulations, Kenzie. Your project sounds really important. Gallery opening was amazing, but missed having you here. Maybe we can meet for coffee when I'm back in town. Just us sisters, no parents, love you." The message brought a smile to McKenna's lips, the first genuine communication from her sister that wasn't centered on Callista's own experiences or achievements. Perhaps there was hope for rebuilding that relationship on more equal footing, separate from their parents' influence. It would take time, and there would be setbacks, but the possibility remained open. As for her parents, McKenna harbored no illusions about dramatic reconciliations or sudden recognition of her worth. Some family dynamics were too deeply entrenched to change fundamentally. But she had changed. The desperate need for parental approval that had driven so many of her choices was giving way to a more grounded self-validation. She had proven, to herself most of all, that she could stand firmly in her own truth, regardless of family pressure or expectations. The $10 gift card that had seemed so emblematic of her perceived value in her family's eyes now struck her as strangely prophetic, not a statement of her worth, but a token of freedom. Like a key to a door she hadn't known existed, it had unlocked the path to independence, to building a life aligned with her own values rather than chasing the conditional love that had been perpetually withheld. Sometimes the most seemingly worthless gifts become the most precious, not for what they are, but for what they reveal. McKenna's journey from overlooked daughter to confident professional hadn't begun with grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but with the quiet dignity of choosing her own path, one small decision at a time. The greatest gift in the end was the freedom to define her own worth, not through others' validation, but through living authentically according to her deepest values. What gift in your life initially seemed worthless, but ended up changing everything? Sometimes our greatest blessings come disguised as disappointments or even insults. If McKenna's story resonated with you, give it a rating from 0 to 10 in the comments and share where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that touch your heart and remind you that sometimes the most painful experiences lead to the most beautiful transformations.